We still believe in journalism, not acting. And that is what this 25-year-old journey for NDTV and the NDTV family has been about. Today is an inflection point in the life of this country. It isn't just the media that stands at a crossroads. It is the country itself. It is the country that is grappling with unprecedented negativity. We all like to complain, don't we? We complain in our drawing rooms about our politicians. We complain about the state of the roads. We complain about the traffic. We complain about the pollution. And guess what? We even complain about our media. But how many times have we participated in solutions? All day today, the 25-year-old journey of NDTV will be marked by what we believe sets us apart. We don't just complain, we solve things. Through the day, you will hear some of the preeminent voices of this country, from science to arts to culture, talking about everything from secularism to the future of this country. In many ways, this summit represents the character of our news. It comes from the same values, the spirit of rationality, the spirit of inquisition, and the passion to follow your heart. We welcome you and thank you again for being part of this momentous milestone, and I hand it over now to Prannoy Roy to begin, fittingly, the very first session on how science and rational spirit and technology can be part of India's solutions.
Thank you very much, Bharat. Well, you mentioned mobile phones, internet. The first decision we had to take at NDTV 25 years ago, I was just saying, was whether we should buy a telex machine or a fax machine. This brand new fax. Is it worth it? What is it? Will it die out? That was 25 years ago. Well, in my 25 years of debates, analysis, and discussion, I can't remember a time when we've all been fortunate enough to have 4 more brilliant minds together. A Nobel Prize winner, a Bharat Ratna, the father of the Green Revolution, and a brilliant computer scientist. Thank you all for coming together, and for especially the panel to be with us on this very special day for us. It's an emotional day. The broad issue for debate and discussion today is, can science and technology help solve many of India's key problems? It's in the overall framework of solutions. The format of the debate today will involve a great deal of audience participation. We will take our first audience questions in the next 5 minutes. Also Twitter, Facebook, and NDTV's second screen. You can just log on to ndtv.com, go to the second screen and ask your question. If others like your question, this is the new democracy. It'll go to the top of the queue, and we shall put your second screen question to the panel. So get ready now to join in the debate. Now first, may I ask you, Venkatraman, or Venki, molecular biology, what can it do? Can it help us?
So let me give you an example. Tuberculosis has been known for thousands of years. But it took several thousand years to identify the causative agent of TB, which is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. HIV was first diagnosed around 1980. the late 70s or 1980, thereabouts. And it only took a decade before not only was the virus identified, there was a test available, the entire virus was sequenced, a lot of its life cycle was figured out, and in the subsequent 10 years, effective drugs that don't cure HIV, there is no cure, but at least that keep it controlled are available if one has the money to pay for them. So that shows you the power of molecular biology in medicine. Now, there's also, I don't have to say this since we have an illustrious person in agriculture here, but molecular biology can make tremendous advances in creating new varieties of crops in a more systematic way than traditional genetics where you do crosses and so on and select. And now you can actually transplant genes from one species to another. You can create drought tolerance. You can create cold tolerance. And you can create better nutrition. You can have rice that has, beta carotene, for instance. That's an essential ingredient in our nutrition. So on the one hand, molecular biology is an academic discipline. It's about the fundamental workings of life in the cell, but it has huge consequences. And I should say it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
And it can actually find solutions to many problems in agriculture, in health, and India should focus on it more?
I think India should certainly invest in molecular biology. Now, you could argue that science is universal, so what does it matter whether a discovery is made in the US or in Europe? We can adopt it. That's one way. But there is a problem of intellectual property. And I think it's very good for each country to have its own science infrastructure. And I think Indian science should be able to find its own niche where it works on problems that are specifically related to India. You can do very interesting science with it. It's not that it has to do second-rate science, that you can do really interesting science by focusing on very specific problems that are related to India. And then, Indians will own the intellectual property to that.
That's actually very important. Since you mentioned agriculture, let me ask you, Professor M.S. Swaminathan. You're the father of the Green Revolution. Now people are talking about a second Green Revolution with genetically modified food based on molecular biology. When you were working on basically genetically modifying food, but out in the field, not in labs, with the high-yielding varieties, a lot of people ask me, if Greenpeace was around, would the Green Revolution have taken place?
Well, first of all, may I have a disclaimer. I am a father of 3 wonderful girls, not father of a revolution.
Okay, grandfather.
Anyway, you are right. You see, after the Bengal famine, right, the high priority was given to agriculture by Jawaharlal Nehru. And he also believed that science and technology are the prime movers of change. Therefore, he introduced a number of innovations, including what we call the land-grant colleges, the Agriculture University at Pantnagar. Incidentally, it is the 150th anniversary of the land-grant college movement in the United States. Abraham Lincoln started it 150 years ago. Well, in spite of all this, Bakra, Nangal, Damodar Valley Corporation, a lot of investment in irrigation, we were not able to make the progress we wanted. And our imports through PL480 wheat started mounting up.
Yeah, we used to import so much wheat. Yes, you're right.
Under those circumstances, how do you change the tide? How do you make the prophets of doom wrong? That was our challenge at the time. And a lot of work had to be done. I won't take the time to go into the scientific aspects. But the fact remains, we have to understand why we were stagnating in yield. Our earlier varieties were not responding to higher quantity of nutrients, even through fertilizers and so on.
Right.
So our first task was to develop varieties which could respond to nutrients, which respond to water. And then the public policy took care of the pricing, because Science can show the way, it can provide the tools, but finally whether it becomes a fruit or not depends upon the economics of farming. That pricing, input-output pricing, procurement price, minimum target. So it was a remarkable transition. And
it was a genuine revolution which saved, I mean, must have improved the lives of hundreds of millions of people since the 60s.
Coming to it, there is a stagnation in terms of yield level.
Now.
This is what you call the second green revolution. You can interpret it in different ways. I think the Prime Minister called second green revolution in dry land areas, because the first one was confined to where there is water, irrigated areas. Yes. So 60% of our land is still rain-fed. Yes. And therefore, how do you bring a revolution in yield in those conditions? That's one aspect. The other is what is called the gene revolution, genetically modified crops, biotechnology, and what roles it plays. Right. The fact remains that fortunately in our country, we still have a very large untapped production reservoir, right, even at currently available levels of technology.
So we need to focus more on the next stage, the second green revolution. And Professor Rao, Venki just said that we need to develop our own IP, we need to focus more on science to cure so many of our problems like agriculture, like medical issues. How competitive are we if we start focusing on science? Can we lead the world?
Well, as we are today, there are a number of good individuals and a few good institutions in India, but in order to be able to compete with the present-day world, where other countries, particularly the neighboring countries, which are coming up very much faster than we are, we have to do much more. We have to create institutions where very good young boys and girls can go and do competitive work. We need such institutions.
Creating institutions is the way forward.
Well, we have a few, but not enough.
Not enough.
In fact,
but we have the raw talent.
Oh, of course. There are very bright people available in India. Amazingly, a lot of our bright people are coming back from US and Europe now. It is not as if they want to stay abroad. Our salaries of scientists have improved. Other conditions are better, but except, well, where we may be doing reasonably well, others are doing better. Others are doing more.
I want to ask you an embarrassing question. Will do these institutions have to be in southern India? Because just looking at this panel, well, I mean, there's a bit of a bias here.
That is not the case. As you know, in the last few years, we have started 5 new institutes of science education and research. They are very, very good science institutes. One north, one south, one in the center, and one in the west. So all 5 places. It's not that.
But I think from Tamil Nadu, you'll go to all the centers.
I don't belong to Tamil Nadu.
Not to your Bangalore.
I belong to a better place called Bangalore, where it's already a
You're
science
a complete outsider.
No,
I wanted to ask.
Bangalore is a sort of a science
Of course,
city.
it's wonderful.
It is a historical thing. It has nothing to do with us today. But anyway, I tell you, we have to compete with the rest of the world, there's no doubt. To be able to work on problems of frontier nature, one. Second, work on problems related to the pressing problems of mankind, energy, water management. These are very crucial for India. We have to do research of a competitive nature in these areas, and we have to do that.
I wanted to ask you on something you've said. Is there any molecular biology, science that can stop idiotic statements from being made? That's going too far. That's expecting too much.
What I do feel that we do make decisions which can be idiotic. That's what
yes.
I do not ascribe idiocy to any particular branch of community.
Scientists are not immune to idiocy.
No, scientists
are not immune.
No, all of us do that.
Welcome to the club of economists.
Yeah.
Chandrasekaran, here's an idiotic thing that India does. The Western world spends billions of dollars on Indian software. And they improve their standard of living. Why aren't we doing that? Why can't we spend on our own software and in key areas that are relevant to India? If you could name a couple where if we invested in our own brilliant software, we could actually progress, India could progress much faster.
I think it's a very valid point. Most of India's problems have to be solved only with technology, not necessarily only information technology, but all technology. But information technology has a huge role to play, whether it is corruption, Whether you want
Can software
Absolutely,
help
because-
stopping corruption? How?
because it'll do two things. One is it'll bring transparency,
Bring in transparency.
complete transparency. Everything will be real time. You can make everything real time, everything visible to everyone, and anything that is
network-
public can be completely available.
And you
real
can
time.
get
Take our-
different
take-
aspects
take-
together and compare them in kind of big data.
Even if you take something like a passport system, definitely has not only improved the speed, but reduced corruption, touts
Right, right.
across the nation. Same thing in Ministry of Company Affairs. So I think whether it's
You're
healthcare,
looking skeptical.
There is a flip side to this, as you know from reading about Snowden and other things,
Privacy
and that is that
aspects,
governments can use technology to exercise far greater control than they used to in the past.
So there is this flip side, but we are so far on the side of chaos and anarchy and not knowing what's happening. We need to at least get to a stage where corruption is probably
corruption, education. For
Education,
example, if we need one of our biggest problem is we need to educate a lot of people, and it's not going to happen by traditional means.
Software can help that? Like how?
Absolutely. If you take online education, now the whole
Online
education, like you see things like Coursera, there are so many different methods by which you can educate people now, because things have become much cheaper. It's not about going to the net alone. You can, and you will be amazed the number of people who use smartphones. It's not the people who are rich who are using the smartphone.
And it's getting cheaper and
It's
cheaper.
getting cheaper and cheaper.
Right. Can I take questions from the floor? As soon as you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll come to it. But that flip side is valid, actually. But in India, you know, we are not even close to getting to the flip side. So do you think we should at least aim at...
So I have to say, as you know, I'm a little bit of an outsider because I left India when I was 19
That's
in
why you're
1971.
unbiased.
You could say I'm unbiased, or perhaps I have a different set of biases.
Right.
So one thing I'd like to say is that, you know, I don't think progress can happen without science and technology, but I don't think science and technology can initiate progress by itself. And that's because science and technology don't exist in a vacuum. They exist within a broad social culture. I have to say, you know, a couple of years ago, I gave a talk about what is rational thinking and evidence-based knowledge, which is what science is. And I argued against things like astrology and homeopathy, and I got a lot of criticism. And we have to remember, this is a country where politicians consult astrologers to make important decisions. They, you know, go to temples and, you know, rather than thinking about the problem. And you need both. The other thing is that countries like Japan and the US were economically advanced first before they became at the forefront of science. So they have to go hand in hand. It's not that science can necessarily lead the way.
Do you believe in God?
I personally don't. Here I am on national television. Right?
Vikram Seth, I think, got a question. Do you have a question?
No.
No, not yet?
The last one answered everything. Did I raise my hand?
I am told that you are dying to ask a question. Well, ask one, because I know you not just as a literature man, but a great economist, an excellent physics student, chemic. I mean, he's one of the most brilliant students this country's produced. So, show your other side, your non-literature
Well, my
side.
question is to you, Tempest.
To me.
Where did you get all these false facts? No, but no. Look, seriously,
Facts can't be false.
Tempest, it's very unjust of you to skewer me like this and force a question out of me. Well, yes, I mean, this question that you said about South India, I noticed that most of our illustrious panelists, you're the notable exception, representing the Indiautic North, East and West. It is remarkable that there's a great emphasis on learning, which varies from one part or another to the country, of the country. And this is a general question thrown out to the panel as a whole. Do you think the federal structure of India with regard particularly to education has something of a bearing upon the development in one area vis-a-vis another of science, innovation, technology, and so on.
By the way, I would like to correct the impression that we have created. Some of the best students I have, in fact, many of us have in the country today,
Bengalis.
are Bengalis, Biharis. In fact, I have at least 30% of the PhDs I produced. I've got about at least 160 people who have got PhDs with me in the last several years. I would say at least 1/3 of them are Bengalis. And Biharis and the
Since
Andhras.
Bengalis represent 90% of the country, 1/3 of your students is an unfair representation.
But anyway, coming back, I think the education, the question he asked, I really believe we have failed to support education the way we should. Forget about science for a minute. If you remember when Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao was the education minister, we wrote a national policy for education. Many of us contributed to writing that thing. It said we must invest 66% of the GDP for education, of which at least 2% must go for higher education. It has not happened.
Right.
We still
So that's
invest.
one solution we need.
That is
We
a very,
need to
very
increase-
important thing.
I think Amartya Sen would agree with you 100% that education is the
Absolutely.
core of all
Before
our
we talk of
solutions.
science or anything else, unless we do more for our schools, for our teachers, and teaching. In fact, I've been pressing the Planning Commission, and they seem to have agreed to make teachers and teaching a sort of a national mission for the next 5 years.
Perfect.
I think it's very, very important.
Dr. Pachori, scientist, ask them a tough question.
All right, let me ask two tough questions, if I may.
Yes. So,
Firstly, you referred to IT and the fact that we're really not up there when it comes to software solutions or whatever. Now, the IT industry in this country has done extremely well. It's generated a lot of surpluses. Stock options have been provided to employees. People have become billionaires. Why have we not invested enough in research and development? I mean, you can't blame the government over there because the industry itself has generated huge surpluses. Why is it that we haven't done enough to really get to the top of the ladder? Let me ask this
should we be
first.
investing more? Is that a solution in research and development?
Absolutely. I think research, investment in research, not only in terms of research by companies, but also research in terms of producing more PhDs. Research as a career is very important. If you really look at the number of researchers we produce, it's been pretty stagnant. We produce about 5,000 to 6,000 scientists, PhDs in science, and about 1,500 or 1,400 PhDs a year in engineering. And most of these people also take to professional careers and don't pursue research after they have completed the research. So we need an environment, and at least we have started doing it in a small way. We have started sponsoring 200 PhDs, and with the condition that those people have to continue research. They can come over, work with us as well, but continue the research. But we don't want them to get into a professional job. So we need to get the right kind of people, and we've got to create the right environment. There has to be incentives. It's absolutely right, and we need to do that. And industry needs to do more.
I think one is research in a generic way, how much investment we are making. In what sectors are we making? You have said some key sectors. Key sectors including education was one, as Professor Rao said. Public health is in a very bad condition, although missions have been started. Hunger, malnutrition are extensive. You are having a campaign against the malnutrition in NDTV and so on. How much are we investing in research in these areas? Because you have to break down, you may have a large figure, so much of percentage of GDP and so on. In the first 25 years of our independence, there was hardly any investment in agricultural research. There was somehow the feeling at Baba, Atomic Energy Center and so on was developed. But only when we started making, to give you one example, the payoff, Basmati rice, Pusa Institute is here in Delhi, Indian. They have young boys, they have developed two very good varieties which are occupying the whole of Basmati area in Punjab, Haryana. This year the profit of the farmers, small farmers, is 25,000 crore and export earnings of $5 billion. The investment is 1 or 2 crores. So in a way the payoff is exceedingly high because this is the occupation of the people of the country, over 60%. So I would say, unfortunately, whatever money is available, it has also been channeled to areas which do not address the concerns you have in terms
so now
of
we need
public
to
health terms.
increase their education outlay and then channelize it to key areas. You had a second question, sir.
Yeah, the second question was my concern, the fact that, you know, our rivers are polluted, where no form of life can exist. We are losing biodiversity in a big way. Now, recently there was a big controversy related to the Madhav Gadgil report on the protection of biodiversity in the Western Ghats.
Yes.
I would have liked scientists to jump in a big way. My question really is, why is it that the scientific community doesn't extend its concerns, its priorities beyond the lab? Because this country has some very serious problems and challenges related to protection of the environment, our natural resources, and how do we ensure that we bring about a change in priorities so that even basic levels of science can start benefiting the management of natural resources. Gandhiji was right. You know, we worry about GDP. Gandhiji said speed is irrelevant if you're going in the wrong direction.
Right.
And I'm afraid we are in some of these
Do you feel
areas.
science is not really connected with issues like this and should be or should not?
I think these are not simply scientific problems. You know, if you have deforestation or
Dead rivers. Our rivers are dead.
Rivers are dead, etc. Those are not just scientific problems. Those are social problems. They're political problems. And it's not fair to expect scientists to solve what is essentially a political and social problem. That involves participation by everyone in society. People have to decide what sort of world they want to live in.
But a lot of solutions have come from science, like
Sure.
reverse osmosis and,
Yeah.
you know.
Science and technology can provide technical solutions, but first of all, saying there is a problem that it needs to be addressed and then looking for a solution, that's a political process. Once that process has taken place, there are plenty of scientists who can be called on to provide technical solutions.
Okay. I think Dr. Nandi over there has a question. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Nandi.
I'm a practicing doctor, and my greatest claim to fame, unfortunately, is that I was on a program called The World This Week 25 years ago.
Despite
And
having
people
written
come to me in the
500
outpatients and say that they only know me from the World
Fellow
This
of the Royal Society of Surgeons and Physicists.
But I want to know whether, and I believe that India has among the worst health systems in the world. But do you think that with electronic medical records, general computerization, we can leapfrog from the worst system to an acceptable system? I mean, I know that there are problems with privacy and garbage in, garbage out stuff. But I believe that unless we have data on what's going wrong and interventions and see what the results are, we will never progress. Do you think that science, computerization, electronic medical records, American system is the answer to Indians' health problems?
I think leapfrogging is a nice word. Yeah. When you answer that, could you handle the second part as well, that we leapfrog with technology and software, but can we at the same time use that software to ensure privacy?
I think I want to go back to the comment made by Venki a few minutes ago. I think the single most impact technology can make, computerization can make, and big data analytics can make is in healthcare. I think in our country, I think it's
biggest is in healthcare.
Huge opportunity, electronic medical records.
You could specify.
Because, for example, if you take oncology, I think we are working with both the Tata Hospital as well as the Adyar Cancer Institute, and we have created with a oncology EMR, let's say. If we can create, one of the initiatives we are talking to all the cancer hospitals, and similarly all the eye hospitals, is to create, can we create a common method of creating these EMRs and sharing these EMRs. Once you have all the patient records and once you have all these data in a way that can be shared and put it in what is called as this big data, because these technologies are not that expensive as they used to be. the kind of analytics, and then you need to bring in many things to integrate. Similarly, the whole DNA sequencing. So many things are happening at the same time. How do we bring it all together? That's the key. And on top of that, you've got to have the governance.
You know, it's an important, bringing it all together is there's this little group of young Indians in California who have shown now that the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Towers, there was enough information available in different areas.
But never brought together.
If it was brought together, it could have been predicted. And they are now being used by countries all over the world for big data analysis, just like this. India is not using them yet. I feel we should, of course.
It requires a lot of effort. It's just not technology alone. Technology can create this big data. Technology can help you to do the analytics on it. But how do we put, whether you call it a governance, how do you programmatize this whole thing and then create a national level project to be able to share this information and then see patterns? And in fact, we can be finding, there's a lot of IPR opportunities as well. We can be finding solutions on drugs here because the amount of data that we will have is far greater than anyone will ever have. So these cases that
I think Dr. Nandi has done about 50 times more liver transplants than the highest in the West. Because of
there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Can I?
Yes.
Sorry, can I take a contrarian view again?
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about all this, I get the sense that you're talking about one India when there's a whole other India out there, which is mostly rural, mostly poor, where the problem is even just having a GP or any trained medical person to even look at them. And
can you use technology to reach them? You know, like you have this
might,
remote doctors.
Ultimately, you need doctors.
You need doctors.
You need doctors who are willing to go to stay in villages or work in rural areas. That's a problem. We talked about education. Unless parents tell their children, yes, being a teacher is a great thing, people are not going to become teachers. If parents say you have to go to IITs and become a management person and work for McKinsey, then that's what the brightest people will do.
But again, that's a social issue, and it's very important, I agree. But in your field, you can make discoveries that can affect the lives of a person in a village, because you can improve their resistance to, say, malaria or tuberculosis.
You can develop better vaccines, you can have better, cheaper medicines.
So that's the job of science, but it can't work in isolation.
Absolutely.
But Professor Rao, can we leapfrog? I like that word. Can we leapfrog? Because we're behind.
Of course we can. I think all we need is to create those conditions that are necessary, which are not difficult to do. A little bit of investment where industry can help, industry and government have to get together to really support the future of science in India.
Right.
Because mere government alone cannot do that.
Let me give an actual practical example.
Yeah.
For example, Professor Rao is near me. During the tsunami of December 26, 2004, it was a terrible tsunami, and he was affected. He was in Sri Lanka. What I am trying to say is, afterwards, all the small fishermen, those we call them artisanal fishermen, going in country boats, they got really afraid of the sea because suddenly the waves came up. Fortunately, in the information technology today has helped completely dispel all those fears. Before they get into the boat and go, they carry GPS data on the wave heights at different distances.
I think just recently we had a cyclone, but everybody had warning, they could move out. It was a tremendous, saved so many lives.
There's not a problem between Sri Lanka and India on the whole fishing area. Every day the newspapers carry it. Today there is a simple method by which all of our fishermen who go on the sea, before they pass our territorial waters, they can get warning. They know you are now going to near the Sri Lanka waters and so on.
We
give information on wave heights. We give information where the fish are. Those who are doing 12 hours a day in the sea, coming back in 2 hours with greater fish. So technology transfer today in our country, not only at the high level, but at the level of the ordinary people, is the greatest challenge. And IT, because in agriculture, both the monsoon and the market are the two determinants of a farmer's well-being. Both of them today, we can convey the right information at the right time to the right people.
Change their lives. And actually, Sumant has a question. Oh, Suman.
Prannoy,
Suman,
thank
yes,
you.
yes, sorry.
You asked a question about belief in God, so I'm not going to ask about that, but I do want to ask the very distinguished scientists on the panel. The scientific temper that Jawaharlal Nehru spoke about, something that we grew up with in our younger days, do you think that the battle for a scientific temper in this country is being won or lost? Because I'm sure a lot of the benefits of science and technology would be easier to grasp and spread if the people in this country had what Nehru called a scientific temper. And I suspect that with the kind of things that we see, whether it's the polarizations or the number of people going on pilgrimages, the beliefs, all that, I'd like to hear from you as scientists if you think that Nehru's vision is being met or is being disappointingly
And
lost.
how can we
Well, you know,
get this
my
intrinsic-
wife and I go to the interiors of India, to the mountains in the Himalayas, in deep south, in Kerala, everywhere, to talk to children in our rural India. And what is amazing is I get hope when I see those children. They have tremendous excitement about science. All the superstitions don't seem to have affected them too much. They are looking forward to a new India. And we have to do something. That is one reason I feel teaching and teachers become very, very important. And let us see the value system in science. And as an answer to you, our value system in science, in society is very peculiar. How much does India, the Indian society, respect science? Science comes in the bottom of the list. I don't think in politics or in public life, science has never appeared as a very important thing for some reason. And if science has to succeed, if science, technology, innovation, three terms that Prannoy Roy has correctly used today, have to succeed for India, they have to have a better value system in India. The industry has to support, which is not done till now. Most of the science money has come from government. How come in America, where I have also professor still, or Cambridge, where I still have a professorship, we at 45 to 50% of the science is supported by industry. Here, 90% is supported by government. So I think entire society has to take interest in science, the future of science, and then this scientific temper issue will then get solved.
But do you feel to develop the scientific temper, you need to communicate your achievements more? That you're talking about disaster warning systems, which are now so well advanced in India, saving millions of lives. We're talking about new type of crops that can give you protein, can give you nutrients, can improve the malnutrition levels or nutrition levels among our children. You need to talk about it to get children involved. You guys are so reticent and sit in your labs and libraries. Come out and
I agree.
Get on NDTV and say, this is what I've done.
I think scientists do need to communicate more. Talking about Professor Rao's point, all of us are born as scientists, so children are naturally scientists because science is nothing more than curiosity about the world and how it works. Yes. And we tend to lose that curiosity as we grow older if it's not fostered. And I think that's one area where education
how did you
can
realize or transform that curiosity into a formal? How did you find that in your DNA?
I'm afraid I can't take much credit for it because my parents were both scientists.
Ah, that's what it's all DNA. See, thank your parents every morning.
Prannoy, if you go to some of the special schools in our rural part, like the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas, which was created in the 1980s during Rajiv Gandhi's time, those children coming from rural India, we must see the kind of questions they ask. They are all doing extremely well. All we need to give is opportunity for our rural children and where the majority of India lives. I think there's a tremendous scope for Indian science.
Professor Swaminathan, do you feel there is a sneaking feeling that Indians are actually basically more scientific or have a scientific temper than many other countries?
No, I think scientific work is going on in our country, in all the laboratories and so on.
Are we born scientists?
No, we are.
Okay, I have a question.
I wouldn't say we're born scientists any more than any other country.
Plenty of
I'm sorry.
more?
No.
We're certainly not born footballers.
No, perhaps not.
But
when I used to teach in IITs, IIT Kanpur, I must say I've taught also in Berkeley or Oxford and certain places. The bright students of India, there is something special. I will not say that is ordinary.
I can tell you something. When we get trainers to come out from all over the world to India, honestly, they say the people they teach in India are brighter than they've been faced anywhere in the world. Now, maybe they say different things when we're not in the room. But, okay, we got a second screen question. Remember, you can go to ndtv.com and tap on second screen and ask a question. It'll float to the top if everybody likes it. And I think this is for Professor Swaminathan. Can technology help solve the problems of water and food security, and if so, how?
Technology?
Help solve the problems of water and food security, both water and food.
Today, for example, this year, your 25th anniversary, a very significant event. 2013 is also a very significant year in our history, because for the first time, the first country, the right to food, a legal right to food, has been conferred upon nearly 80% of the population. No other country has. How did we go from begging bowl or ship to mouth to right to food with homegrown food?
Right.
It has been a technological transformation supported by public policy. But I think what is important is to ensure that what I call the science of science communication has to receive much greater attention.
Yes.
Because today there's a problem, whether genetically modified foods or nuclear power. There are a lot of, even today, Kudangulam and so on, people have great apprehensions.
We need to communicate that. Professor Chandrasekaran, it's another 25th anniversary today. It's the 25th anniversary of the .com. It was used 25 years ago. Is that going to transform our lives, the internet?
Already, I think if you really look at what has happened in the last 25 years, more so in the last 5 years and 10 years, is just phenomenal. The rate of pace of this acceleration is just phenomenal. I just want to make 2 points.
Yes, please.
Maybe a little bit controversial, but I think many people seem to get frustrated that we are not spending enough on this, spending enough on that. I think we also should not forget, just by comparing us with the US and UK, we are a very young nation. I mean, in a manner of speaking, we are only 50, 60 years old. And we have huge problems, societal problems. We have huge poverty problems. And the number of things that we need doing in this country, the amount of funding that is required is just enormous. And no way that we can match the kind of investment in terms of real funding.
But you get the impression that money spent on science and technology give you the best returns.
Sure. So we need to probably change our priorities.
Yes.
And that's one. The second thing is even Indian industries are becoming larger in size and scale only in the last probably 20 years or so. Right. And, so I think there's a lot that has been done in a limited sense, but I think there are a lot more that can be done, but I think we need to assign our resources. It's a resource allocation issue. We will never have unlimited funding. So we need to think about that.
I'm being told we've got 2 minutes left, and we could have last 30 seconds from each of you as a summary of how we can use science to solve some of our problems. Yes,
I think you earlier referred to both food and water security. Both of them can be overcome only with the help of modern technology. Food, fortunately, today we are in a good condition, but there's no time to relax. Climate change, there are many other constraints are going to come. Forward-looking research, anticipative research, and also translational research, converting know-how into do-how.
Right.
These areas require much greater attention. And water security also can be ensured if there's public cooperation, if everybody cooperates.
Right.
We have different sources of water, the seawater, the sewage water, and the groundwater and the rainwater. Right. And we have to have an integrated water security system.
I think that's crucial. Yes, sir.
In addition to food and energy, water, I think energy is one of the very, very crucial areas we have to worry about. India will face very terrible shortage of
Science and energy?
Well, there's so much science to be done for energy. Where my own, quite a bit of research of mine is related.
Give me one
energy.
example.
For example, can we do artificial photosynthesis? What leaves
artificial
do,
photosynthesis.
can we do in the laboratory, produce hydrogen? This is one of my areas of research now. But I think we have to prioritize funding, supporting research of this kind, which is pragmatic, which is useful, and which will directly affect India's future.
And we have the raw material to do
I think so.
I
think we can do that. That is one thing. Second, don't forget education. In the hurry to talk about science, let us not forget it is eventually the teacher and teaching at school level and later that will bring the future of India.
3 recommendations. First, at the basic level, get the education right by having better quality of teaching and helping teachers and teaching methods.
Right.
Second one, encourage research and allocate a lot of funding, and both the industry and the government, to promote research to solve national problems, whether it is in power, water, etc. Third one is create intellectual property.
Yes?
Intellectual property.
Property, right. That's what you were started the whole debate.
I agree with Professor Rao's thing that science development and technology development has to be balanced. You need to start with children, make sure they're scientifically trained and educated, and that just means thinking in a rational scientific way so that they then go on to make rational choices. You also need mid-level technicians for manufacturing, for science. Everybody cannot be a lab director. And just like everybody cannot be a manager, an MBA type manager. So there's this imbalance here where everyone wants to be a PhD level scientist, but there are lots of science to be done at lower levels.
Into
and so
real world.
unless you have that broad infrastructure, it's not going to happen.
Well, apart from you, we thank your parents for your DNA. That's why you're here, your parents. A round of applause for these wonderful, wonderful minds. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.